I still think about that car all the time, and I can't believe that everything that happened with it happened within 7 days. On September 8th, 2002, I went to the funeral for an old co-worker of mine, someone I barely knew really. I went out of a courtesy more than anything else. It was this guy I used to work with a long time ago at a dairy farm. He had been killed in a hit-and-run accident 2 days before. They hadn't been able to find the guy, or a whole lot of evidence, frankly. So I went to this thing and I just shook a bunch of hands of people I hadn't seen for a lot of years. I was specifically trying not to get too many details about what happened. As I walked away from the grave, my attention was drawn by something. It was a sound of a suffering engine. I looked down a hill, and down near the cremation garden, sitting there idling on the path, was an old car. It was completely average, maybe a 15, 20-year-old junker, but there was something unusual about it. It took me a minute to realize just what it was from my distance. The paint job was all wrong. It looked, I swear, like someone had done this car in grey house paint. It was wildly uneven. You could see the strange streaks in it. I was so high up from my angle, I couldn't see who was inside. It just sat there rumbling, and my only thought was, who here is getting in that thing? It turned out nobody. Everyone was walking in the other direction, and eventually I did too. That was on a Monday. On Thursday, just past dusk, a rainstorm came into the area, and it snarled the tail end of rush hour traffic really bad. Even the back road I usually took out of the city was clogged up. The rain was torrential for a good 45 minutes or so before it showed signs of tapering off. Then the traffic just stopped and it stayed that way, one of those epic backups that was obviously caused by some accident. Here came two ambulances from behind me, and there were sirens from the other direction. I'd been sitting there inching along for what seemed like forever, but then people started getting out of their cars entirely, always a sign we would just have to dig in. I stayed in mine, but at one point in time I rolled down the window and just poked my head out a little, trying not to get soaked. And a guy up ahead jogged over. He said someone on foot had been hit, and it was really bad. It had happened on a side road, but they quickly had to seal off the intersection up ahead. You could see the red glare of all those emergency vehicles far, far ahead. I closed my eyes and put the car in park and tried to relax. 15 minutes later, we began inching along again, and I got to looking around. Off on the right there was a used car lot I had seen hundreds of times before, a row of cars with prices taped up on their windshields, sitting in the dark. But in the middle of that row there was one that didn't have a price. The license plate caught my eye. Out of state, letters YYG. When I looked closer, I could see that the car's headlights were actually on, but the lamps were so weak you could barely tell. Because I was only moving forward a few yards at a time, I had time for all the details to come into focus. And I knew I was looking at that car, the one I had seen at the funeral a few days before. The paint job didn't produce those little glints that a normal one would in a passive light of the carpet place next door. It looked so different even to the naked eye. I couldn't see any detail through the windshield or the windows, no matter what angles emerged as I moved. I didn't take my eyes off that car. Finally, I had to move on. The detour had been set up and things were getting clear. I saw at least 5 police cars blocking off Dordress Avenue, but we were veered too far around the scene. And like the killing of my old co-worker, the police wouldn't find any paint on the victim's body. None. Strange. Then came the next Monday. More thunderstorms came into the area, even a tornado warning as it got towards dusk. I was driving back towards the city from a survey site in the middle of nowhere, and I came over a rural hill, and the sky just up ahead of me was the scariest one I had ever seen. Not just black with thunderheads, there were 3 huge vertical wisps coming down that looked to me like they could develop into something truly destructive. The wind was picking up and I was speeding down a 2-lane country highway just trying to get to the nearest town so I could pull off and wait out whatever was coming. I almost got caught in a speed trap. There was a cop car just off the shoulder in the trees off to the right, and then there was another one 3 miles down. Same thing, a cop car hiding a little, trying to catch people on this lonely straightaway. And then I got mad, thinking that this should have been the least of their worries with this storm coming. I figured I was safe after that second trap, so I picked my speed up, and by now the leaves and the grass were kicking up and hitting the windshield. The rain was coming down fast. I spotted a third trap up ahead, and I actually slapped the steering wheel in anger as I took my foot off the gas. But it wasn't a cop car. It was the one. I knew it right away. I could tell it by the license plate. It was facing out towards the road. It didn't move as I went past, didn't come out from its place just off the road. I watched for the very next turn-off, always checking in the rearview mirror. I took a left onto something called Kilkenny Road and went past a couple of farms. And then I heard a huge thunderclap. And I had gotten unlucky because as the rain started, Kilkenny Road turned into a single lane with no divider. Cracking pavement, trees close to the side, squeezing out what tiny bit of daylight was left. I made another turn, but the road wasn't any better, so I pulled off onto the non-existent shoulder and turned the engine off. The storm hit, and it got so bad, so fast, that I couldn't even see through the rear windshield to tell if anything had followed me. I was powerless. I was afraid the trees all around me would shed branches onto the car. Nothing I could do but wait and hope it wouldn't get any worse. Thankfully, it didn't. Whatever was above me in the sky broke apart just past dark. And then there was nothing but a steady, hard rain when the winds fell. I got moving again, and since there was no good place to turn around, I pinned my hopes on another left turn to get me back to the main road. But it just took me further into nowhere, winding and twisting, and at one point the little road was just washed out, a gully of water in front of me. So I had to back up 100 yards and take some poorly marked right turn. I was in an aggravating maze of wood roads that were probably unmaintained by the county, used only by hunters maybe. It was dark and I was scared of seeing headlights ahead of me and that car in motion. Then up ahead on the left there was an object just off the road in the tall grass. A 10-speed bicycle laying on the side and its rear wheel noticeably askew in the frame, motionless. I stopped in the middle of the road, threw the car in park and rolled the window down. What did that bike mean? I decided I had to get out and look around, but I was trembling. When I put my hand on the door handle, one thought raced through my mind, which was, don't do it. Don't get out of the car. It feels ridiculous to be frightened, but how many people felt ridiculous and so they didn't do the safest thing and it killed them? Don't get out of the car. Pure, shameful cowardness. Ahead and behind me the road was dark, no visibility. On my right was a big open field sloping upward as it went into the distance, farmland with no farmhouse in sight, swirling clouds against the sky which was the colour of dark sea. And there it was. There was the car sitting in the field 100 yards away. It was facing away from the road, no lights on, like it was trying to fool me. I threw my car in drive and I hit the gas. The straightaway ahead of me was very long and I was up to 35 miles an hour before I didn't dare go any faster. The visibility was so bad, the road was so badly maintained. I took a guess on the turn and the new road was bigger and safer. Still nothing in the rearview mirror, and just a mile away there was Route 40. I turned right with only the barest glance to what I was merging onto, and there I was, on a 4-lane highway. Other cars were in view, but it was a full 20 minutes and I was in a truck stop surrounded by other people before I felt safe. After I called the police and told them about a possible accident on something called Reed Road outside Charlotta, I sat there drinking coffee for a long time under the fluorescence. looking out at the parking lot as the rain slowly stopped, and then I got moving towards 66. Here's what would have happened if I had gotten out of my car and gone to check on that bike. And I know I have no way of knowing this, and yet I do know. That car on the hill would have begun to suddenly back up as fast as its old engine would let it, coming down the hill at top speed, jerking crazily left and right, trying to keep on a straight line. And I would have been completely frozen. And because it would be so out of control, shuddering and bouncing on the grass, it may had missed me by 20 feet. But it would have then rammed into my car, giving it time to stabilise and try to get me again. But at least in that split second, I would have been able to finally see if there was anyone actually behind the wheel. There was no hit-and-run accidents that night on Reed Road. I never got an explanation for why the bike was there. And there were no more hit-and-runs in the Tri-County area for more than a year, and even that was some drunk in a van. It's a big county with lots of roads. Who knows where that car went, and if it ever did get the exact murder it wanted.